You have probably rearranged your life around a sudden loss. A job, a relationship, a person who held everything together. And somewhere in the rebuilding, you became someone slightly different than you were before. That feels like a metaphor. For one small reef fish is not a metaphor at all. When its world falls apart, its body rebuilds itself. Not its habits, not its attitude, its actual sex. This is not science fiction. It happens on coral reefs every single day, and it has been happening for millions of years. Picture a small group of wrasses living inside a single coral head. One male, several females. The male is larger, more colorful, and he defends this tiny patch of reef like it is the only thing that matters, because to him, it is. He mates with the females. He chases off rivals. He is, in every sense, the center of this miniature world. Then, one afternoon, he is gone, eaten by a passing grouper, swept away by a current. It does not matter how. What matters is what happens next. Within hours, the largest female in the group starts acting strange. She becomes more aggressive. She starts patrolling the territory the male used to guard. Within days, her body begins producing testosterone instead of estrogen. Within about 2 weeks, she is functionally, anatomically, completely male. She can fertilize eggs. She has taken over not just the role, but the biology of the fish she replaced. Scientists call this sequential hermaphroditism, and the direction this particular fish moves in, female to male, is called protogeny. The plain English version is simple. This is an animal built with the ability to switch which sex it is, and it uses that ability when the social structure around it collapses. The bluehead wrasse, the species most famously studied for this, lives across Caribbean reefs in these small harems. In the early 1970s, marine biologist D. Ross Robertson documented exactly this behavior by removing dominant males from wild groups and simply watching what happened. Within days, a female began behaving like a male. Within 2 weeks, she was producing sperm. Robertson had shown, in real reef conditions, that sex in these fish was not fixed at birth. It was a role waiting to be filled. Why would evolution build a body that can do this? Think about the economics of reproduction on a coral reef. A single male can fertilize the eggs of many females. But a female without eggs to fertilize, without a male to fertilize them, produces nothing. If you're a small fish living in a group where only one male mates with everyone, the worst possible outcome is a group with no male at all. Evolution does not like wasted potential. So in species like this, the body carries a backup plan. If the top male disappears, the next most dominant female does not wait for a stranger to wander in and take over. She becomes the leader herself, biologically as well as behaviorally. This is where it gets stranger, because the switch does not start in the reproductive organs. It starts in the brain. Neuroscientist John Godwin, who has spent decades studying these fish, discovered that the very first changes after a male disappears are neurological, not physical. Certain brain regions tied to aggression and dominance activate almost immediately, hours before any visible bodily change. The fish starts thinking like a male before it looks anything like one. The behavior leads. The body follows. Testosterone rises. The ovaries reorganize into testes. Pigmentation shifts to the bold blue and green coloring associated with dominant males in the species. By the time an outside observer could visually confirm the change, the fish's brain has already been rewired for weeks. This is not unique to wrasses either. Clownfish, the species that made an entire generation fall in love with a father searching for his son in a Pixar film, do something even more rigid. Every clownfish group has exactly one breeding female, one breeding male beneath her, and a handful of smaller, non-breeding fish waiting in line. If the female dies, the breeding male does not wait for a new female to arrive from outside. He transitions into one. Researchers Wolfgang Frick and Simone Frick documented this social hierarchy in wild anemone-dwelling clownfish populations, showing that the entire group's sex ratios are dictated purely by rank, not by anything fixed at birth. Every clownfish is born with the potential to become either sex. Its future depends entirely on its position in line when a vacancy opens. Here is the part that should make you sit with this a little longer. None of these fish are choosing this the way you would choose a decision. There is no debate, no identity crisis, no gradual realization. The transformation is triggered entirely by the absence of something the group needs. Remove the missing piece, and biology fills the gap on its own, using the closest available body suited for the job. You might wonder whether this could ever happen in reverse. In some species, it can. Certain gobies and some anemonefish relatives are capable of bidirectional sex change, moving back and forth between male and female more than once across a lifetime, depending entirely on the social conditions around them at the time. The fish is not locked into a single biological identity. It is locked into responding to whatever role its environment currently requires. This raises an uncomfortable question about the assumptions humans carry into the natural world. For a long time, biologists assumed sex across the animal kingdom worked the way it does in most mammals. Fixed at birth, unchanging, foundational. Fish like these forced a rewrite of that assumption. In many marine species, sex is not a fact you are born with. It is a role your biology is prepared to fill when circumstances demand it. That is not a fringe oddity. Researchers estimate that sequential hermaphroditism appears in more than 500 species of fish across dozens of families, spanning reef systems worldwide. So why does this story feel oddly familiar, even though you have never once considered switching your biological sex to fill a gap in a social group? Because you have filled gaps before. Maybe not biologically, but think about the last time someone left a role that mattered, a parent, a manager, a friend who quietly held a group together, and think about who stepped up afterward. It is rarely the most obvious replacement. It is usually whoever was already closest, already paying attention, already positioned to notice what needed to happen next. Human hierarchies reorganize themselves after loss in a strikingly similar way to a reef fish colony. Someone becomes the new center of gravity, not because they were destined to, but because the structure around them demanded it and their position made them the most capable of answering. The bluehead wrasse does this in 2 weeks with hormones instead of decisions. You do it over months with conversations and responsibilities instead of testosterone. But the underlying mechanism, an empty space in a social structure pulling the nearest capable individual into a new form, is not so different. Biology built this response in a fish because groups without leadership do not survive. It seems your species built something eerily similar into its social instincts, for exactly the same reason. The next time you watch someone step into a role no one expected them to take, after a loss no one planned for, remember the wrasse hiding inside its coral head. It did not wait to be told what to become. Its world fell apart, and something in it simply knew what needed to be filled.